Listening is an important part of any interaction you have with someone else. It allows you to develop relationships, help others, and learn new skills. Your child must be able to follow complex directions to be independent at school and later on in a job. As your child becomes more independent with basic listener skills and following simple one-step directions, you will want to introduce more advanced listener skills. You might be wondering whether you or your child are ready to take this leap, but it can be fun, so don't be afraid to give it a try. You will teach these skills in much the same way as you teach other skills. First, introduce them in a structured way using a small number of items or pictures. Then incorporate this teaching into your everyday activities with your child. Now let's take a look at an example of how this teaching can help your child become better at following complex directions. Jessica is worried about her daughter Vanessa. Vanessa did well in kindergarten, but now that she's in first grade, she seems to be having some trouble. The teacher, Mr. Parker, says she simply doesn't follow directions and it's becoming a real problem. Jessica meets with the teacher to get a better understanding of his concerns. He's frustrated that she requires so much direct prompting to get her to do the things the other children do willingly. Jessica knows that Vanessa is usually cooperative, so she doesn't understand why this year is so different. Jessica talks with the BCBA who worked with Vanessa when she was in preschool. Vanessa had stopped going to ABA therapy once she started in school because she had been doing so well, but now Jessica was unsure how to help her daughter. The BCBA asked Jessica to explain the directions Vanessa was having trouble following. Jessica gave the example Mr. Parker used when they met. Mr. Parker often asks the class to get something to write with and meet him on the rug. When he does, Vanessa just goes to the rug and Mr. Parker has to tell her to go get her pencil. The BCBA explained that Vanessa probably wasn't being intentionally uncooperative, but she probably didn't understand Mr. Parker's directions. The BCBA reviewed how to teach Vanessa to follow complex directions. Jessica spent some time practicing gradually more complex directions with Vanessa. Vanessa picked up the skills quickly when Jessica used pictures in a structured teaching format, but when Jessica tried to introduce the skills in a more natural way, it seemed a bit more difficult. Jessica did her best to make it fun, but there were times when they both seemed frustrated. When that happened, Jessica took a step back to something a bit easier and tried again with a skill that was a little less challenging. Over time, Vanessa began to follow more complex directions more easily. Jessica met with Mr. Parker again to talk about what they had been working on. He even commented that Vanessa was beginning to listen better at school. It turns out it really was a problem with understanding, not behavior, after all. Did you ever play the game I Spy when you were growing up? Someone says, I spy, providing clues to something in the environment, and your job was to guess what they were looking at based on those clues. Developing more complex listener skills is like playing an organized game of I Spy. Your child listens to a direction and shows us that she knows by responding physically, usually by pointing to the item or the picture. In these activities, you won't say the name of the target directly. Instead, you will say a feature, such as he has a tail, the function, such as he barks, or a class, such as an animal. As with teaching other listener skills, gradually make the tasks more difficult by adding new targets and increasing the array of items or pictures you put in front of her. Each time you put the items or pictures in front of her, make sure to change their positions so she doesn't learn that show me the one you eat means point to the picture in the top left corner. As she learns what you are asking of her, you can start to introduce this skill when you're playing with her. Have some toys in front of you or out on a shelf. Make it fun and make sure to have a reinforcer ready. Give her a clue about one of the items using a feature, the function, or the class of the item. If she points to the correct item, give her a reinforcer along with praise. If she gets it wrong, help her by showing her the correct item. But don't give her the reinforcer. Next, take an I Spy walk with your child. You can head to the grocery store or just take a walk outside. Practice some of the targets you taught her in the house if you can. If you introduce new targets, she might need some help at first to answer correctly. When playing this game with your child, it's best to start out with things that don't move to allow her plenty of time to respond. If you need to help her respond correctly, remember to fade this help so she gradually begins to respond on her own. When you help her, gently guide her hand to the correct item or picture without saying anything. Then, over time, provide less and less physical guidance until she starts to answer on her own. Keep this fun for your child and be sure to give her plenty of reinforcement, especially if this is something that's hard for her. Gradually increase the difficulty of the listener tasks you present, making them more meaningful to her everyday life as you go. Take baby steps so neither of you become too frustrated. Try some common two-step directions, such as take your plate to the table and sit down, or put your book on the shelf, then come here. Introduce tasks that are a bit less direct, such as take your plate to the place where you eat, or put the book where it belongs. If she needs help understanding what you want her to do, go ahead and help her, but remember to fade the help so she becomes more independent.